The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was released on March 3, 2017 to an onslaught of immaculate reviews and universal acclaim from the industry and fans alike. The game was touted as a masterful sandbox of exploration, maintaining the essence of the Zelda franchise while leaping into deeply uncharted territory for Nintendo. Since its release, the speedrunning community has torn the game to shreds, bringing an average gamer's completion time of 50 plus hours down to a mere 24 minutes. One runner, however, couldn't wait until the game's released. Established Minecraft speedrunner and YouTuber Seth Bling completed this speedrun on March 2, 2017, a full day before the game hit shelves. In January 2017, Seth had told Nintendo that he would be interested in running the game. Seeing an opportunity for additional exposure and fan delight, Nintendo sent Seth a Switch and Breath of the Wild a whole month early for him to broadcast his runs to over 1 million subscribers. This created a rare instance where a game was able to be thoroughly explored from a speedrunner's perspective before release. This culminated with the first documented run of Breath of the Wild clocking in at 2 hours and 22 minutes on March 2nd, 2017, followed by a YouTube video from Seth explaining a 1 hour and 30-minute route. The next day, with the doors left wide open, runners got to work adapting Seth's at the time rudimentary strategies and implementing their own. For example, it was discovered on March 4th that when comparing languages, German speaking with French text would prove to be the quickest. With runners brute forcing their way to Ganon and dissecting the game to find glitches and time saves, it wouldn't take long for a new benchmark to be made. Within a week of release, speedrunner Gymnast86 took the record down to its first sub-hour run at 58 minutes. To accomplish this feat, Gymnast combined several strats which are still used today, most notably whistle sprinting and shield surfing for quicker movement. Let's take a look at some highlights from this run. Gymnast utilizes whistle sprinting to travel quicker across the Great Plateau. Whistle sprinting is a technique discovered by Zalutz 2 days after the game's release, which is used to bypass Link's stamina system. Link has the ability to whistle by holding down on the D-pad. By holding down this button and repeatedly tapping B, the sprint button, Link can sprint while regenerating stamina. Since whistle sprinting is slightly slower than regular sprinting, runners will use this regular sprint until just before their stamina is depleted, and then whistle sprint until their stamina wheel is replenished. After completing the first shrine, Gymnast fast travels back to the Great Plateau Tower. He then jumps off and does an old version of fall damage cancel by shield surfing during his descent, and swinging his axe just before hitting the ground to do an aerial attack. Other than these saves, Gymnast does things such as shield surfing, which is generally quicker than sprinting, and taking a horse to get to Hyrule Castle in order to shave more time off of the record. When he gets to Hyrule Castle, Gymnast uses a route which avoids guardians and other enemies while picking up weapons and gear along the way such as broadswords, claymores, Lysol boomerangs, Lysol shields, and perhaps most importantly, bomb arrows. This scavenger hunt for weapons results in a semi-optimized final battle against the Blades, where Gymnast is able to stun them with headshots before stun-locking them with two-handed weapon spin attacks. A few more flurry rushes, stun locks, and arrows to the head later, and Gymnast has made his way to Dark Beast Ganon, where he memorized the order of light arrow shots in order to defeat the King of Darkness as quickly as possible and end the run in just under an hour. With a new benchmark set for Breath of the Wild speedruns so quickly though, Gymnast's record would not stand for long. In fact, another runner by the name of Venick would take the title only 1 day later on March 11th, 2017, albeit not without controversy.
It's time to go over the speed limit.
Nintendo is known for including amiibo bonuses in their games for players who purchase the physical figurines, and their flagship Switch game was no exception. By scanning the Link Super Smash Bros. Series amiibo, runners were able to spawn Epona the horse, along with a range of gear. In the early days of running Breath of the Wild, this saved around 30 seconds getting to Hyrule Castle and acquiring gear to take on the Blights and Ganon. Venick used this to bring the record to 54 minutes and 5 seconds, and then a week later down to 49 minutes and 43 seconds. After a month of shield surfing, whistle sprinting, and Epona spawning their way to Hyrule Castle, runners began thinking outside the box to shave time off the record. In April 2017, a strategy began being used to skip most of the Cryonis Shrine. Runners literally and figuratively jumped over barriers to save 7 seconds. And now, the Ikkitrix saga. Ikki's documented journey began on March 18th, 2017, a mere 2 weeks after the game's release. With the run clocking in at 52 minutes 21 seconds, Ikki was just 4 minutes off from the record and a mere 4 seconds off from where it was 2 days prior. This was the Wild West of Breath of the Wild speedruns, where routes were being experimented with and a mistake did not necessarily mean a reset. This meta was rudimentary, and runners had to use the basics to brute force their way to Ganon. In a conversation I had with Ikki, he described this era as a rapid discovery phase where he was more focused on optimizing routes and minimizing mistakes than actually achieving a record pace in itself. Despite this, Ikki would reach out and just miss a record several more times in the following weeks. On March 19th, he would take a minute off the gap, leaving just 3 minutes between himself and glory. On the 22nd, the gap would close to just over a minute. The trend of Ikki missing records by a day or two would continue through March, but the brutal backbreaker of Ikki's saga came on April 3rd when he missed a record by less than 30 seconds, because of a blood moon. And then Ikki got the Link amiibo, and everything changed. No longer were his runs going to be lost to bad RNG. Now nothing was going to stand in Ikki's way. On April 6th, Ikkitrix finally went all the way. With his first amiibo PB, he tied the record set by Gymnast 2 days earlier at 41:59. A tie, however, is not what Ikki came for, and 4 days later he returned to secure the bag at 41:53. He then spent the remainder of April lowering the record to 41:04, then 40:57, then 40:18, then... Whoa, wait, hold up. I think you know where this is going. We're rapidly approaching a 10-minute barrier. Let's slow things down and take a look at what Ikkitrix was up to on April 27th, 2017. Ikkitrix starts off by whistle sprinting to the Great Plateau Tower using a specific optimized route and picking up select cooking items and weapons along the way, including a two-handed axe and a Bako shield. To save time getting down from the tower, Ikki uses a fall cancel technique by equipping his axe before jumping off, then holding the throw weapon button on the descent and unequipping it just before landing. Ikki then continues the trek across the Great Plateau, whistle sprinting, shield surfing, and teleporting from the Magnesis Shrine, where he got a gold split, to the Bomb Shrine, Shrine of Resurrection, and up Mount Helia to the Cryonis Shrine. There he used a quick time save by Cryonis jumping to reach the monk by using the momentum of the rising ice block to propel himself upwards while shield surfing, and achieving a second gold split in the process. Finally, he makes his way to and completes the Stasis Shrine with a third gold split. After completing the final trial, Ikkitrix makes use of a very nice boulder stasis launch and a tree stasis launch to get to the top of the Temple of Time and receive the glider. This was an overall great plateau portion of the run with no real mistakes, setting Ikki up for the castle already 6 seconds ahead of his PB. After parachuting down, Ikki stasis bounces across Hyrule Field, then spawns Epona with his amiibo to complete his journey to Hyrule Castle. Inside the gates, Ikki stasis bounces again to the dining hall where he methodically scours his surroundings for weapons, arrows, and food to prepare for the final boss fights. Things begin losing momentum here as Link forgets how to swing an axe while breaking crates.
What the... swing the axe?
Ikki gets confused when a dead Lizalfos isn't alarmed by a whistle.
Is he dead? He's dead.
And then when he brutally messes up the boost from the stasis bounce up to the castle sanctum and has to climb a portion of the way there. Overall, Ikki loses about 7 seconds in this section, leaving him to play catch up in the final boss battles if he wanted a PB, let alone a sub 40. Luckily, Ikki does everything right with the Blights, using a lot of skill and a little luck to help, as most good runs do. Ikki follows the procedural methods to take on the Ganons. Notably, he stuns the Blights with headshots from his bow and then wails on them while they're in their stun states. Ikki's precision, including hitting every headshot first try, results in a gold split and a 12-second PB buffer going into Ganon, with the best possible time of 39:52. Ikkitrix is on track to beat his PB and be the first runner to achieve a sub 40-minute run. All that stands in his way now is Ganon in his dual forms. And the battle begins. Ikki's arsenal in this battle includes a mix of flurry rushes, headshots, and shield parries to deflect lasers. Unfortunately, Ikki mistimes the second parry, breaking his shield, leaving him with only a Bako shield. Headshots are missed with arrows, minimizing damage, but Ikki shows no sign of worry as he finishes the first stage of the battle, declaring,
"Pretty fast."
Once he gets Ganon to his second stage, Ikki is able to stun lock him by facing away from him with a two-handed weapon and timing his hits to keep Ganon perpetually stunned. A few spin attacks later, and his first Ganon battle is finished. It's no gold split, but Ikkitrix leaves himself 21 seconds to spare for a PB. Normally, Dark Beast Ganon is a victory lap, a gimme after the hardships of defeating Ganon and his Blights, a showcase for the beauty of Hyrule Field, the enormity of Ganon and his malice, and the power of Zelda. This was not a normal Dark Beast Ganon fight though. This was the most important one Ikkitrix has had to date. Ikki efficiently hits the first 3 light arrows, although just barely landing the first one. After that, with little hesitation, Ikki nailed the remaining shots, tying his previous PB's Dark Beast Ganon segment and beating that run by 21 seconds. The final time? 39:57. Sub 40 minutes is an insane accomplishment considering the size of Breath of the Wild. On average, the main story itself takes 50 hours to complete. With a sub 40 completed and no other major milestones seeming to be in sight, things slowed down a bit. But surely we weren't nearing the end of Breath of the Wild speedrunning. I mean, routes were being optimized, movement speed was being pushed to its limits, but speedrunning is much more than that. Where were the skips, the game-breaking glitches, the rivalries, heartbreaks, and beautiful victories? Was this really all we can make of the largest, most ambitious Nintendo title to date? No, of course not. This was only the beginning. After achieving a sub 40, Ikkitrix wasn't finding as much fulfillment in running any percent as he wasn't just discovering new optimizations and routes. After all, isn't the promise of discovery over every hill and around every Baku camp what drew most of us to the game in the first place? On top of this, Ikki began a new job in May and had less time to focus on running. Ikki was mostly silent between May and August, and the time he did spend on Breath of the Wild was mostly focused on routing the All Shrines category. That was, until Orchestra achieved her record run on July 27th. Orca had been running Breath of the Wild since its first week and held the any percent record several times before. In fact, she had the 3rd documented record for the game and chased the record down with pioneers such as Vanek, Gymnast, SVA, and Chaotic Ace for the first month. When Orca beat Ikki's record with a 39:35, Ikki saw her sloppy movements and knew what had to be done. After a 3-month hiatus from any percent, Ikki needed not even 2 weeks to retrieve his crown. With a really good Great Plateau, Ikki arrived at the castle 30 seconds ahead of his PB. After a much cleaner castle route, Ikki arrived at the Sanctum nearly a minute ahead of his PB. He lost some time with the Blights and first Ganon battle, but still ended the run with the 39:25, 10 seconds ahead of Orca. And that was the end of that. The first era of Breath of the Wild speedrunning came to an end with Ikkitrix on top. The rest of 2017 was slow as runners couldn't get within grasp of the record, and many moved on to other categories or games entirely. In fact, every runner I have mentioned so far more or less stopped running any percent after this. This not only gave Ikkitrix the longest held record at 9.5 months, but it left the category wide open for new runners to catch up and surpass their predecessors. This is Wolhaiksong, and this is the Super Launch.
See? Okay, Razen, are you looking? I got the boost. Dude, look how fast I'm going. Oh my god.
In April 2018, a runner by the name of Wolhaiksong shared this clip, one of the earliest documented super launches. A super launch is essentially a stasis launch with twice as much speed and distance. It happens when a stasis launch is done and the paraglider is pulled during a lag frame, causing Link's speed transferring into the glide to double. If you're interested in learning more about the specifics of a super launch, I would highly recommend checking out Pikastroff's explanation listed in the description. A few weeks after super launch was discovered, Lulucore, a runner who had been chasing the record for a year, finally achieved his goal and became the first record holder to use a super launch, without even meaning to.
Oh, that's a good launch. Oh, that's a good launch. Holy shit, dude! Holy shit, dude!
Did you get a SSL?
A natural SSL, yeah?
What the
Now Link was going fast, but any percent was going faster. Within months of discovery, the super launch would be thrown to the wayside in favor of its hotter best friend, the bullet time bounce. The earliest video of a BTB came in the video from Twitter user MP_0710 on August 15th, 2018. The short explanation of a BTB is that some objects are not properly slowed by bullet time, which is initiated when Link pulls out his bow while in midair. Some of these objects include ragdolling enemies and enemies being raised by growing Cryonis pillars. The easiest way to perform a BTB is by shield surfing onto the head of a red bokoblin while in bullet time, as a red bokoblin will ragdoll when hit on the head. When landing on the bokoblin, you can get out of bullet time by pressing Y before launching with extreme speed and height through the air. The quicker you cancel bullet time after the bounce, the better the BTB will be. As if this wasn't enough, 2 weeks later, this was discovered. This is one of the earliest videos of a shield clip, and the community was shocked when it started making its rounds. However, nobody really knew what to make of it, and much of the community went back to trying to figure out floor clipping. Even those who were interested in figuring out the shield clip were focusing on getting it consistent inside of shrines. Once things got a bit more consistent, however, people started thinking. And it wouldn't take long for glitch hunter and speedrunner Legend of Link to do this. What you just watched was the first documented shield clip into a shrine. Legend of Link was right. Breath of the Wild was dead. The old Breath of the Wild at least. The implications of this new discovery were huge. If you could clip into the plateau shrines, then you wouldn't need to activate the Great Plateau Tower, of which the cutscene itself took nearly 2 minutes. Aww, wait, you didn't think that was all, did you? I mean, the community just discovered clipping through walls. No, of course that wasn't all. 6 days later, Swiffy, a runner who was instrumental in figuring out a setup for shield clipping, tweeted this clip. And it took only a few hours for the community to find a way to clip out from out of bounds onto the Great Plateau. Now, with super launches, bullet time bounces, intro skips, and shield clips all added to the category within a few months' time span, it was only a matter of time before the current any percent record would be demolished. In fact, it was 10 days. On September 12, 2018, Wolhaiksong would take the record with a 36:40. Let's take a look. Song started his run off with the newfound out-of-bounds intro skip, whistle sprinting his way up the bordering wall to the Great Plateau. After some resource collecting from Bako camps, he made his way to the Stasis Shrine where he flawlessly sets up and executes a wall clip to get inside. Song then does a few stasis launches to get around the plateau and up the Cryonis Shrine where he does his second clip, only getting caught up a little trying to clip back inbounds from under the shrine. Two more stasis launches, and Song surprises himself in completing yet another first try wall clip into the Magnesis Shrine, this time getting back in bounds inside the shrine much quicker.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately, a second surprise comes soon after as he bonks himself on the head with a metal door, killing a defensive 2-heart-toting Link. With a very nice plateau behind him though, this was no reason to worry. Song was on his way to the final shrine, still confident in his run, and he had every right to be as he hit a final wall clip into the bomb shrine with only 2 tries, getting back in bounds. Now, despite the death in the previous shrine, Song was on the quickest plateau pace due to the wall clips and still over a minute and a half ahead of his PB going to Hyrule Field. Choosing not to BTB, Song makes his way to Hyrule Castle the tried and true way using launches, losing about 18 seconds off his PB due to poor launches. Song goes to do the castle route as normal, but instead of using a metal crate on the exterior of the castle to launch up to the sanctum, he launches through a small crack in the ceiling. After an amazingly successful launch, he now knew he had the first wall clip record on his hands, and nerves were kicking in.
Okay, I'm nervous as fuck now. I'm freaking out.
Song quickly disposed of the blights, even with poor RNG, and was now face to face with an enemy he knew all too well. He had 6 minutes to beat Ganon and claim the first victory in this new era of any percent. He had great arrow RNG going into the battle, but missed a few headshots in the first half. That didn't matter though, as he completed Ganon's first stage and was able to eliminate him with Stunlock in the second stage. With nerves surely as high as ever, Song missed a few light arrows in the final battle, but the final and most important arrow went into Ganon's head at 3640, setting a new record and the first to do so using wall clips. There is clearly room for improvement in this run, but a new standard was set for any percent. If you weren't going to grind wall clip practice sessions, you weren't allowed entry to the winner's circle, and a lonely circle that would be. Or at least it would have been, if it weren't for a runner called Rosin Earns. On October 11th, Rosin showed up to the winner's circle with a 33.36. He was essentially running the same run as Song. Now was a race to push any percent to new heights, and the starter pistol just shot off. Song came back 2 weeks later with a 33.15 and one major change. BTBs were no longer confined to Hyrule Field. Song was bringing the party to the Great Plateau, bouncing from Cryonis to Magnesis. Unfortunately, he didn't quite make it all the way and still required a stasis launch to make it to Magnesis. Song was making moves, but he left it opening for Rosin, and Rosin wasn't one to let opportunities slip. "16 seconds ahead of PB, Rosin spent this time to calmly explain how to do the Cryonis to Magnesis BTB with a relatively long setup. While the setup and explanation took a few seconds, it mattered not, as the bounce landed him directly in front of Magnesis. Not only this, but by landing in front of the shrine coming off a BTB, the shrine's gate was unloaded and Rosin could walk right in without any wall clipping. Song's record was demolished by over half a minute only 5 days after he got it, and not only that, but Rosin was the first to break the 33-minute barrier with a 32.41. The record would ping-pong between the two through November, with Song getting a 32.25 on November 2nd, Rosin breaking the 32-minute barrier on November 6th with a 31.53, Song with a 31.46 and then a 31.06, and Rosin breaking yet another minute barrier on November 21st with a 30.42. On November 30th, he brought it down to a 30.18. Now one thing was on everybody's mind: 18 seconds away from a 10-minute barrier. It's been a year and a half since any percent had been in this position. It was clear that the 30-minute barrier would be broken soon. It was just a matter of who would do it. Would Song come for revenge after losing all of those minute barrier victories?
Let's go.
Or would Rosin continue his reign of dominance?
That's my time, 32.41.
The first sub-30 had been achieved, of course by none other than Rosin. With this huge barrier broken, runners felt a tremendous amount of pressure lifted off their shoulders and would be able to keep shaving away at the time. Through the first half of 2019, the record was lowered by Rosin, Skeeto, and Song down to a 28.25 by Skeeto in early August. Breath of the Wild any percent was running steady with a similar route for almost a year since the spawn skip and shield clips were implemented. That is, until wind bombs were discovered by Twitter user Sadagashi on September 5th, 2019, when he demonstrated the technique in a video within a shrine. For the uninitiated, a wind bombing, or bomb impact launch, happens when Link enters bullet time in the air, drops both bombs one after another, and then detonates the first bomb to launch the second bomb into Link, sending him soaring at tremendous speeds. This had its benefits over BTBs in that you could do them essentially anywhere and with much greater precision. No runner made use of wind bombs, and 2 months later, something perhaps much more impressive happened. It was discovered by glitch hunter BotW that you can entirely skip the Windblight battle by damaging the beast during the cutscene. This is done by launching an arrow towards the direction of where Windblight Ganon will appear directly before entering the cutscene. Since cutscenes are live and not pre-rendered, the arrow will do continuous damage to Windblight Ganon through the entire cutscene, resulting in the beast's demise by the end of the cutscene. Using a precise setup, you can nearly guarantee the arrow hits every time. Not only does this save time in the battle, but it allows runners to spend less time collecting items which would have been used during the first Blight battle. With 2 new strats available to runners, good old Song would waste little time getting to work. On November 17th, Song showcased his skill by breaking the record first with old strats, getting a 28-22, and then later that same day, breaking it again with wind bombs and the Windblade skip at 27-53. Here are the comparisons of the old versus new strats from both of these runs done on the same day. Skeeto wouldn't take long to catch on to the new strats and would get a 27-29 in December. Huge strides were being made through 2019, and everything that was learned would continue to be optimized through 2020 as Song, Skeeto, and Rosin brought the record below 26 minutes going into 2021. After a year of no real discoveries or strat changes, the community began getting antsy for something new and exciting in the Breath of the Wild Discord. The route included a BTB from the Great Plateau to the guard's chamber, in which your runner arrives with the gate unloaded and Link free to walk right in before the castle cutscene plays. For specifics of this route, I've included a link in the description, but essentially, after days of collaboration within the community stemming from Lim's pitch, a route was put together which made it quicker to obtain the items required to defeat Ganon and the Blights. Notably, Vivoxe demonstrated how an out-of-bounds glitch could be used with wind bombs to get from the guard's chamber to Zelda's study to get more arrows, a royal bow, and an edge of duality. Castle out-of-bound glitches have been known since the game was only 3 months old, and has had many iterations over the years, but never has it found any use in any percent speedruns until now. After being optimized through a huge group effort by the community, the new route was ready to be tested by a top runner, and good thing Rosin, Song, and Skeeto were all well versed and certainly skilled enough to pull it off. But no, it wouldn't be any of the Trinity to pull this off. This was a new wave of Breath of the Wild any percent, and a new runner had been on the prowl ready to pounce.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Seizing the opportunity, a runner by the name of player_5 achieved a 26-24 using the new route. A few days later, P5 lowered the time again by 18 seconds. In May, Rosin will return, of course, to break another minute barrier with 25-54. Striving to break the 25-minute barrier, P5 continued his campaign of domination. He only started running any percent a year earlier, but P5 was making waves and breaking boundaries in the category. With endless hours and frustrating resets behind him, on October 24th, P5 did this. Another huge barrier was broken, and P5 was cemented into Breath of the Wild history with a stunning optimized run. Although it wasn't perfect by any means, it was difficult to imagine the time dropping a whole lot lower, let alone hitting the next 5-minute barrier at 20 minutes. Good thing, on September 4th, 2021, perhaps the biggest and most broken glitch in Breath of the Wild to date was discovered and demonstrated by Legend of Link. Yes, the same Legend of Link that broke the game 3 years earlier when he discovered shield clipping into shrines. That glitch was BLSS. The applications of BLSS were foremost applied to longer runs such as 100%, as the mechanics and reliability were being sorted out within the community. But now that P5 had a sub 25 under his belt, he could focus on implementing BLSS into his run. It wasn't easy to beat his new record, and it would take months of grinding, but P5 rung in 2022 by shaving 3 seconds off his previous record, achieving the first record using BLSS on January 3rd. At this point, P5 was seemingly an untouchable monarch of the any percent community. He quickly mastered the new castle strats and blight skips, implemented BLSS, and now spent the beginning of 2022 bringing the record down another 30 seconds to 24:27. As quickly as sub 25 came, P5 now had his eyes set on the 24-minute barrier, and nobody dared stand in his way. That is, except keuss. With so many new routes and glitches coming to any percent, P5 demonstrated that new runners now stood a chance to get into running Breath of the Wild. While P5 himself was a new runner, keuss started even later in November of 2021. Posting a 31-minute attempt on November 25th, keuss would quickly learn and excel in the category, coming within a minute of P5 by February with a 25:18. The race was on, but it still proved to be difficult as the two runners only posted a combined 3 PBs in March, April, and May. By June 12th, keuss mustered up a 24:40, only 25 seconds behind P5. Then, 5 days later, this happened. In a matter of 8 months, keuss went from a newbie runner of Breath of the Wild any percent to the only one who could put an end to P5's reign, or even get anywhere decently close. P5 now had competition, and any percent would get exciting again. Or at least, that would have been the case if not for the aforementioned thoroughly optimized runs that were taking place. There is a reason it was only the two of these runners at the top. What they were doing was not easy, took tremendous amounts of time and effort to even begin to get close to competitively, and anyways, the game was 5 years old by now and people were moving on to other games. That doesn't mean the saga ends without a bang though. No way was P5 going to put all that time and effort to waste and let keuss end up on top. Keuss achieved glory and would hang up his controller after getting his record, but for P5 the grind was still on. Or rather, the grind would resume after a summer vacation. P5 had a family vacation coming up a week after keuss' record, which gave him only a week to grind out runs in hopes to reclaim his position of dominance before he would have to take a break. 2 days after keuss posted his record, this happened. P5 came within half a second of taking the record back. He was happy to have achieved this PV so quickly, but now he had less than a week to shave a second off his time before he could take a break. And it never happened. June and July would be quiet months as keuss held on to his undisputed title. In fact, the only other runner to even break the 25-minute barrier was Song, and he hung up his controller at the end of July after achieving his 24:46. Luckily, P5 returned to his runs in August and continued his quest to beat keuss. Then, on August 12th, this happened.
Okay, the run is kind of dead. If he gives me an instant laser... You can get pretty close to PB, but... Wait, that was a killer Dark Beast load. I guess it's time to focus up then. This would be incredible if this PBs... It's not going to. There's no way. Are you kidding? Oh my god. This is crazy.
After falling short by half a second earlier that summer, P5 came back to beat Koroks by 1 frame.
Another 24:10. I don't think that's gonna do the trick.
It was less than a second saved on his own PB, but it got the job done as P5 reclaims his position at the top of the category. The story doesn't end there though, because another minute barrier was in sight. Yeah, beating Koroks was great, but P5 had his sights set on greater things. He wanted the first sub 24 and was only 10 seconds away now. A sub 24 would not only be another minute barrier under his belt, but most likely the final minute barrier to be possible with current strats. It wouldn't take long, as on August 17th, P5 wouldn't just take 10 seconds off his time. He wouldn't even just take 15 seconds off his time. P5 took 17 whole seconds off his time, cementing his place on top and being the first runner to break the 24-minute barrier. In fact, as of writing this, P5 is still the only runner to have done so. The category is still going strong though. P5 ran the category in Games Done Quick 23, and while preparing, he beat his own record by another 2 seconds for 23:51 on January 2nd. A newer runner by the name of Trevor SR had been climbing up the leaderboard since May 2022 and is quickly approaching the 23-minute barrier. As far as the champ goes, P5 believes that not much more can be done with the current strat. There are small time saves such as wind bombing in shrines to go straight to the monk and wind bombing outside of the stasis shrine instead of stasis launching from a rock, but these are riskier strats that save very little time. While the current chapter of Breath of the Wild Any% is certainly nearing its end, I would not be surprised if this book holds many, many more to come. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom comes out in mid-2023 and may respark interest in speedrunning Breath of the Wild due to their conceptual and technical similarities. A new glitch could be discovered just as suddenly as BLSS was only a year and a half prior to this video. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is perhaps the largest and most ambitious Zelda title in the franchise's history. It changed core concepts of the series, brought forth new stories, mechanics, and perhaps even a new timeline. Despite all of this, one thing remained constant for Link, and that's that gamers wanted to see how quickly he can save Hyrule. And, as the game passes its 7th year, this is how they did that. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my first video and would like to see more, please consider subscribing. Thanks!